Hello and good day, everyone. Welcome to another week of Greek study. We are going to skip chapter 2 in the textbook and go straight to chapter 3. I don't know if you've had a chance to pick up the textbook, but chapter 2 is it's kind of an overview of the entire Greek system. I understand why the author does it. It's to get you introduced to the Greek verb system because that is by far the largest and most complicated part of Greek. And the author wants to kind of give you an introduction and kind of give you the opportunity to have a look at the way the entire thing works. But in my experience, I did that the first few years of teaching, and it just ended up confusing students. There was way too much information, and nobody retained that information anyway. And so what I am doing is I'm covering everything in chapter 2, but as it comes up, okay, as we discuss the various forms of the Greek verbs, we will cover that information, and I'll go over what all of that means. All right, but we'll be getting right into chapter 3 here, which is an introduction to the first set of Greek verbs, as you can see there, present and future active indicative. Now, what on earth does this mean? Well, let's get into it. All right, verbs can be separated into the following categories. There are about 5 categories that each verb can be taken apart. We call it parsing. Basically, you take a Greek verb form and you piece out all of the information that the form gives you. Okay, and so here are some of the categories that you'll need to be thinking about. Tense, first of all, is what we call kind of the time element of a verb. In English, you have past, present, future. You have a few more complicated tenses. You have like a present perfect, present participle, past participle. Okay, but all of these are tenses, and they're dealing with kind of time, but also there's some elements of what kind of action are we talking about. Okay, are we talking about an action that happens as a snapshot in time, or are we talking about an action that is described as continuing? If you consider the two sentences, I walk, okay, and I am walking. All right, I walk. That's kind of a statement of what happens, what is happening, but it is more of a snapshot, right? It's just a simple statement. It's just a snapshot of what's happening. There's no kind of commentary about how long it's taking, and that it's happening repeatedly or once. It doesn't say any of that. It just says that something is in progress of happening. Whereas if I say I am walking, that is implying some kind of continuity. It's implying a process. And so, yeah, those two things are also included in the tense. Okay, tense deals with both time. Is it now? Is it before now? Or is it in the future? Right? And it also deals with the kind of action. Are we talking about a snapshot, or are we talking about sort of a video camera recording in progress? Okay, that is tense. The next category is called voice. Okay, and I have here, the voice is the relation of the subject to the verb. Okay, in English we have 2 voices. We have active, which means the subject is doing or performing the action. All right, if I say I walk, I talk, I run, I study, I am doing or performing that action. All right, so that is the active voice. The passive voice is the opposite. The subject is not performing the action. The subject is now receiving the action. Okay, if I say I study, means that, yeah, I'm doing the studying. If I say I am studied, now somebody or something else is studying me, right? I am studied. That is passive voice. Now a middle voice, which is not in English, but Greek does have this. It's a little bit complicated, but middle simply means that the subject is performing an action that comes back on the subject, or the subject is acting on its own behalf. There isn't a really great way to translate this really cleanly in English because, again, we don't really have this idea, but the way that we would do this one is something like, I study myself. Okay. The subject is performing the action, I study, but then the action kind of is coming back onto the subject. Okay, I study myself. That's one way to translate the middle. There are actually a few ways to translate it. Again, we don't have this in English, and so it's somewhat foreign. It's somewhat clunky. A lot of the ways that we do it. Okay, but Greek does have this, and we will be learning this in the second quarter, the middle voice. Okay. The last thing I have up here on this slide is something called mood, and this is kind of a funny word. Verbs have mood, but it doesn't mean that a verb is in a good mood, or a verb is grouchy, or a verb is gloomy. Okay, that's not what we're talking about when we talk about verb mood. What we mean when we're talking about verb mood is the relation of the verbal action or idea to reality. What does that mean? Okay, well, I've put up a few examples of moods here. The indicative mood is the first mood that we will learn, and it is the only verbal mood that we will be studying the first 2 quarters. All right, through the end of winter quarter, we will only be studying the indicative mood, and the indicative is the statement of fact. Okay, this is a mood that you use when you are stating something that is true, or that you believe to be true, or that you want to present as true. I walk. Past tense, I talk. I will go. All right, all of these are indicative moods. They're all things that I am presenting as factual. All right, so yeah, that is what we use to address reality, is the indicative mood. Okay, all of your basic verb forms are indicatives. Now, there are a couple of other moods that we will be studying in the last quarter, spring quarter, but there's a mood called the subjunctive mood. The subjunctive indicates a possibility or a contingency. This is like basically one step removed from reality. I'm not presenting this as factual or that it is happening. I'm saying it's a possibility that it might happen. All right. If it is clear tomorrow, I might walk 2 miles to the store. All right. I'm giving you the condition now. Okay. If something happens, then I might do something. Okay. And that might is a kind of a thing that indicates we're talking about the subjunctive. Okay. So yeah, subjunctive, now we're dealing in possibility, not reality. The imperative mood expresses a command. This is one of the moods that is furthest removed from reality. Okay, it is not saying that this is happening or that this is factual. It is actually making an attempt to influence the will or the actions of another person or thing. All right, that's the imperative mood, expressing a command. In indicative mood, the students study. Indicative, okay, I'm saying what's happening. Imperative mood would be students, as I'm directly addressing you, students study. Okay, that's the imperative. So those are 3 moods. There are a number of others that we will look at over the course of the final quarter. All right, but those are 3 of the categories that you need to be thinking of when we are talking about verbs. Okay, tense, time, and kind of action. Voice, what is the relationship of the subject to the verb? Okay, is the subject performing the verb? Is the subject receiving the verb? Okay, those kinds of ideas. And then the mood, how is this presented in terms of reality or fact? Moving on. There are 2 other very important categories when we're looking at verbs, and that is person and number. Person indicates who exactly is the subject of the verb. All right, is the subject of the verb the author or the speaker, and is that speaker involved in that subject, or is the subject is the speaker addressing somebody else, okay, as the subject, or are we talking about something completely removed from the speaker and a listener or audience? All right. There's also an element called number, and number means there's just two categories in number. There's singular, which means one, and plural, which means more than one. Okay, it could be two, it could be 2 billion. Okay, but just plural is more than one, singular is one. These two things are very closely related. Okay, you can have the first person. Okay, again, the subject includes the speaker or the author, and the singular first person is I. All right, the speaker is the one who is doing it or receiving the action. A plural, if there's more than one, then you would use we. Okay, then there's a group of two or more, and that includes the speaker or author. Okay, plural we. Second person, in English, there is no distinction in the second person singular or plural, which causes some confusion. All right, but second person, the subject is being addressed by the speaker or the author. It's as if we're in a conversation and I am speaking to you. Okay, now you is the second person. Singular you, plural you. Okay, in class I will sometimes use the slang term, sort of plural y'all. Okay, that's a good example of a second person plural that has come into English, even though it is kind of dependent on dialect or slang wherever you are from. Okay, if you are from more of a country sort of place, or if you're from maybe one of the southern states, you might use that. Okay, I went to college at Walla Walla, which was really kind of out in the country, and people talked like that, so I kind of picked that up. So you'll hear me use that at times when I'm using that plural you. Now the third person, the subject is something or someone that is distinct and separate from the speaker and the audience. Okay, if it's not I, if it's not you, it is singular he, she, or it, plural they. All right, so that is person and number. Now, why is this important? Well, let's have a look. In Greek, there are separate, distinct words that we use for personal pronouns. Okay, all of these words that we use to replace, direct or specific references to people. If I'm talking to somebody, I don't always need to be saying my name. Okay, Kevin works as a pastor. Kevin also teaches Greek classes at La Sierra University. Kevin is married. Okay, if I start talking like that, you're going to very quickly think that I'm kind of strange. Okay, or I'm trying to imitate The Rock, the sort of alter ego, wrestling ego of the actor Dwayne Johnson, okay, who in his wrestling persona would always be saying things like The Rock says this, The Rock has come back to whatever city he was in. Okay, we don't normally do that. Okay, and so in order to replace that and make it a little bit smoother and make people think that you're not trying to be some kind of wrestler persona or celebrity, we use the pronoun I, all right, if I'm talking about myself. Right? We do have those in Greek, but we're not going to get those immediately. Those will not be introduced until chapter 9, which is the last chapter that we are doing this quarter. Okay? But even without specific words for these personal pronouns, we can still make sentences, and we can actually still use these personal pronouns. They will appear in this chapter. Okay, but so how do we do that without knowing those separate specific words for these pronouns? Well, I've put here each Greek verb, when you go to translate into English, okay, the Greek verbal idea includes two parts. Okay, it has the idea of the action or state of being, lead, go, walk, jump. But also in the Greek verb, you will also be able to tell the person and number that we are dealing with. Okay, so you will have a subject there even if there is only one Greek word. Okay, the single Greek verb means both a verbal action but also gives you the person and number of the subject. Okay. It might be easier to explain if we have it on the screen. So before I get into the verb chart, the verb chart is 6 forms. Okay, every time we talk about a Greek verb, you will be dealing with 6 forms. And what those 6 forms are, they are first person singular, second person singular, third person singular, then first plural, second plural, third plural. All right. And now when we go to each verb chart, you have to know 3 things. You have to know tense, voice, and mood. And I will be giving that to you. Actually, if you look at the heading for this slide, you will see it says forms of the present active indicative. And right there, you know 3 things. You know, first of all, the tense, which is present. Okay, the action is happening now. The voice of the verb is active, okay, which means, again, voice is the relation of the subject to the action. Here, the subject is always going to be the one that is doing or performing the action, active voice. Okay, and then finally, the mood is indicative, as I was just discussing. Okay, is this presented as fact? Is it presented as a possibility? Is it presented as some kind of remote, long shot wish? In this case, it is indicative, so the action is presented as fact. So we have tense, present, voice active, mood indicative. Now, depending on the form, you will also be able to decipher what person and number we are talking about and what the subject is. And once again, from pretty much the last slide, personal pronouns are part of that verb translation, even though there's only one Greek word. If I remember correctly, it's been about, 25, actually longer than that. It's been almost 30 years since I was taking Spanish in high school. And if I remember correctly, Spanish works this way. All right, you do not have to say, yo tengo, okay? If you want to say I have, you don't have to specify that pronoun, right? Yo tengo is fine to say, but it's kind of emphasizing that I, okay? It's I and nobody else. But if you just say tengo, okay, then that single word means I and have. All right, so you can put that pronoun in if you want, or you don't have to, and people will still understand what you're saying. And it's the same thing in Greek. All right, so let's take a look now at the actual Greek form chart. So, present active indicative forms of the Greek verb luo. We're going to be using this verb a lot. You'll become very familiar with this verb. Because this verb is very nice, it is totally regular. It follows very predictable set patterns in pretty much every single one of these charts. Change the tense to whatever you want, past tense, future tense, anything. It will change forms so that you know what we're dealing with. But those changes are very nice and regular and predictable. Unfortunately, that's not the case for all Greek verbs, and we'll meet some of the exceptions in this very chapter. Okay, but this verb is a very nice standard verb that we use to teach students who are coming into it because this verb is very nice and predictable. Okay, it means I loose. Unfortunately, yeah, though it's not a really common verb. It's kind of a weird meaning. We don't really think about this a lot. Okay, but yeah, this verb means I loose, I release, I untie. It can mean I destroy. Okay, just anything like turning loose or releasing or anything like that, okay? Yeah, so here we go with the forms, okay? Your first person singular is the form that we're going to be using whenever you look this up in a dictionary, okay? This is the basic form that we start out with and we build everything off of. Greek is really weird in this way, that it uses a first-person singular as a dictionary form. I think most other languages, Spanish, French, German, Romanian, okay, they all use what we call the infinitive form as the kind of basic form. To plus your verb, to walk, to run, to jump, to loose. Okay, here in Greek, the form that we're going to be using as the dictionary basic form is actually a first-person singular of the present active indicative. Okay, I loose. So the first-person singular is luo. Second person, luace. You loose. Third person singular, luae. Epsilon iota. She, he, or it looses. All right, those are your singular forms, first, second, and third person. Now going to the plurals. First person plural, we, is lu, amen. All right, the ending is omicron, mu, epsilon, nu, lu, amen. And that means we loose. Second person plural, luete. The ending on that is epsilon, tau, epsilon. And it means you plural, y'all loose. And the third person plural, luusin or luusi, they loose. All right, I've put here on the bottom, notice that the verb stem that I've highlighted in red here, that stays the same in all of the forms. Okay, to get the verb stem, you take your dictionary form, in this case, luo, you drop off that first person singular ending, which is simply the omega on the end, and you are left with the verb stem. With luo, the verb stem is very simple, lambda upsilon. Okay? So that verb stem will stay the same in all of the forms. That does not change in the middle of a verb chart. Okay, so that's how you know that all of these forms are coming from the same verb, luo. And here I've highlighted in red the endings, okay, the verb endings, and those are the things that will change. Okay, that's what tells you, is this second person plural, is it third person singular, is it first person singular? Okay, by looking at the endings. The omega ending there is always going to be first person singular. All right, second person singular, epsilon, iota, sigma, ace. Third person singular, epsilon, iota. All right, so the verb endings will change depending on the person and the number of the subject. Now, when you were looking at the first slide with these forms on it, I'm sure you had a question about the parentheses and the nu, okay, that third person plural ending. What on earth is going on there? Okay, luusi and then this nu in parentheses. This is something called a movable nu, and it appears in the third person plural form of the present active indicative. It will appear in other places as well as we start expanding into other verb charts, other tenses, voices, etc. Okay, you'll be seeing this in other forms and other words. The movable nu, think of English, a chair. I sit in a chair, but I eat an apple. Okay, same word, okay, a or an. You just kind of stick that n sound to make it easier to pronounce. Okay, right? If something follows up with a vowel or a vowel sound, you put that n on the end, so you don't say a apple. Okay, that's a little bit awkward and difficult to say, so to make it nice and smooth, you say an apple. Okay, same thing happening here. For whatever reason, I don't know why they didn't do this with the other endings, okay, but for some reason, that third-person plural ending, the Greeks apparently did not like to say luusi, and then follow that up with a vowel sound. Luusi anthropon, okay, they didn't like to say that, and so what they would do is, if the thing that follows this third-person plural verb ending, if that begins with a vowel or a diphthong, okay, or vowel sound, they will put that nu onto the end of that form. All right. If it's what follows is a consonant, then we just leave it off. Okay, it's just luusi. So I have here an example, luusi tauta. Okay. What follows that is a tau. Okay, it's a word that begins with a tau, and so there's no nu. Luusi tauta. But if what follows is a vowel or diphthong, like auton, then you would say luusin auton. All right. Yeah, but then it's just like the English indefinite article. Okay, a and an. Same idea. Why that only happens in the third person plural, again, I'm not really sure, but that's how it works. All right, and we will see that elsewhere, and anytime you see that nu in parentheses, that's simply what it means. You will see sometimes the form without the nu, and sometimes with the nu. All right, one other thing here, I have the translation there, luo, I loose, lues, you loose, lue, he, she, or it looses. Okay. And you can translate these that way, but the Greek present tense can also be translated as what we call a progressive present. In other words, something that's in progress as it is happening, which then would be I am loosing. Okay. You are loosing, he, she, or it is loosing. I preached an entire sermon once based on this, and I took John 1 verse 1. Oh, no, not John 1:1. It was John 1:5. I'm sorry. It says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not comprehended / understood / overcome it. Okay. Number of ways to translate that last verb, but the one that I was looking at, the one that I was interested in, was the verb shines. Okay, the light shines in the darkness. And I built an entire sermon around this idea that you can translate the Greek as the light shines in the darkness, or the light is shining in the darkness. Okay, emphasizing that the light shines, yes, but it is in progress of shining. Okay, and we can still look up and we can still see it. Okay? And you can do that with any Greek present verb. Okay, you can translate it both ways, and so it is a good idea to keep that in mind so you can explore the various connotations. Okay, what does it mean to say the light shines in the darkness versus the light is shining in the darkness? All right, so there is kind of the practical lesson for this week. Okay, Greek present. Always think about that. And you don't need a commentary, you don't need whatever. Okay, now anytime you see a Greek present tense, think about those two ways, and if you're preaching a sermon, or if you're giving some kind of a Bible study, or if you're just talking to a friend, think about maybe what that means. Is it a certain specific kind of good news to tell somebody who is really depressed, really discouraged, very anxious, for example, right now, with the way that everything is unraveling in this world and the way that things are going on? Okay, what does it mean to tell somebody who is feeling that way, you know what, the light is shining in the darkness. It is in progress. It is happening right now, and you can get a look at that. Okay, I don't know, but yeah, you can think about that. All right, forming these Greek verbs. Okay, again, you take those endings, and I'll put those endings up there, and you can put those endings now onto any Greek verb stem. Okay, the endings that I have highlighted here in red, you can put those onto any any other verb stem, and it still means the same thing, okay? Omega means I, epsilon, iota, sigma, ace means you, epsilon, tau, epsilon means y'all, or you plural, okay? You can add those 6 standard endings to any verb stem, and now you have a complete sentence. All right, you have a subject, you have a verb, you can put a period on that thing and be done with it, and you have a complete thought. Okay, very simple thought, and very simple thoughts that we're dealing with right now. But yeah, with a single word, you have a full sentence in Greek. And I've put some examples here. Okay, the verb ago, alpha with a smooth breathing mark, gamma, and omega. The omega there is your standard ending, okay, first person singular ending. As I said before, the way that we look up dictionary forms in Greek is the first person singular of the present active indicative. And so all of these are going to be your dictionary forms, okay? Alpha with a smooth breathing mark, gamma, omega is the Greek verb ago, which means I lead. If we take this and change it to say agete, epsilon, tau, epsilon now is the ending. If you look back here, epsilon, tau, epsilon is the second person plural. So agete means you plural, or y'all lead. Okay? Ago, I lead. Agete, you plural lead. The verb grapho, gamma, rho, alpha, phi, omega, this means I write, closely related to things like autograph or graphics. Okay, idea I write. Graphamen, omicron, mu, epsilon, nu, amen, graph amen. This is the first person plural ending, and so this means now we write, or we are writing. Try another verb, lego. Lambda, epsilon, gamma, omega. This verb means I say or I speak. Used a lot in the Gospels, especially the Gospel of John, if I remember correctly. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Okay, Jesus said to them, you know, the Pharisees are interrogating Jesus, and Jesus said to them, you know, anybody who is without sin, let the first person that comes up without sin, let him be the first one to throw the stone at her. Okay, anytime Jesus says anything to somebody, it's this verb. Okay, lego, I say or I speak. If we change it to lege, epsilon, iota on the ending, that is now a third person singular, so it could mean he, she, or it says. Hopefully the rest of the passage around it will give you context to which one of those it is, but just that form there, lege, it could be any one of those. All right. I keep on putting that. If you ever have to translate this, you don't need to put he, she, or it. Just choose one of those. Okay. And the last verb there, sozo. Okay. Sigma, omega, zeta, omega. Sozo. It means I save. If we want to change it to they save, sozusi, or sozusin with the movable nu. Okay, depending on what comes afterwards, it might have the nu or it might not. Sozusin, they save. Okay. That's an omicron, upsilon, sigma, iota, movable nu. Okay. They save. Again, the dictionary form that you would look up and that you build all of these forms off of is that first person singular form. Now remember, as I've been translating this, these have all been statements. Okay, agete, you plural lead. Graphamen, we write. Lege, she says. Sozusin, they save. All right. If you use it in a question, and remember from last chapter, the Greek question mark looks like an English semicolon. So all of these examples on the very bottom of the slide are questions. But in questions, you have to use some kind of helping verb. All right, and so instead of saying you do save, it's not do you save, question mark. Okay, why did I put that? Yeah, I must have been thinking about something else there. Okay, agete, not do you save. Okay, agete is do you lead. I'm sorry about that. Okay, then lege, question mark. Okay, this is now, let me actually change this is bothering me. All right, there we go. Agete, do you lead? Question. Lege, okay, question. Does it say? Does he say? Does she say? Okay. Sozu sin. Okay, instead of they save, now question mark, do they save? All right, there you go. So your Greek verbs, that's how you form them. Okay, you take your standard stem, verb stem, that's never going to change, and then you put one of those 6 endings on it, and that will tell you person and number, and that is what tells you what pronoun to translate with the verb. Okay. All right. If you need to go back, rewind this, find the the first part of the present active indicative and have a look over those present tense forms. But if you've got those down and you at least understand what we're doing, you can go back and memorize them. You'll want to memorize that verb chart front to back and back to front, okay? Because those are very important and they're kind of the basic foundation that we're going to be using for the verbs. As you'll see in this next part, okay, we're now going to transition to another tense. All right, now we are going from present tense, this is happening now, to the future tense, this is yet to happen. Okay, this is happening in the future. This is a prediction or a statement of something that is so certain that I can say with confidence that it will happen. All right, the nice thing about the future is that it uses the exact same endings as the present active indicative. So if you go back to the chart that has those 6 forms of the present active indicative, you can get the endings and you will use those same endings for the future tense. All right, the only difference between the future and the present is that the future adds an element, and I have highlighted it here in the verb chart in red. All right. Notice here, in all of these future forms, there is a sigma that is inserted at the end of the verb stem. All right, again, the verb stem is lambda upsilon, lu. We have luo. And in the future, you stick that sigma in between the end of the verb stem and the verb ending. So you're left with luso in the first person singular, which means now I will loose. Just the presence of that sigma means that, yeah, you have a future indicative verb here. Okay, you can think of the sigma as being the English helping verb will. All right, so first person singular, luso, I will loose. Second person singular, luces, you will loose. Third person singular, luce, she, he, or it will loose. And going to the plurals, first person plural, lusamen, we will loose. Second person plural, luceta, y'all will loose. And third person plural, lususin or lususi, they will loose. All right. And again, if you look at those endings, exactly the same as the present tense, so very nice. Easy to remember. If you've got the present tense endings, you now know the future tense endings. Okay, and you should be able to recognize person and number, no problem. Like the present tense, the future tense can have two meanings. Okay, I will loose, simple future, or progressive future, I will be loosing. Okay, emphasizing the process or repetitiveness or continuity. All right, there are your future forms. Now, with the future, there's something kind of weird that happens, but this is hopefully not difficult to imagine or to see what's happening here. Okay, this long word amalgamation, what in like chemistry or something like that, it means like to stick some stuff together. Okay, it's not like totally fused where the atoms are like totally bonded, but this is something that's kind of stuck. Various elements are kind of stuck together. Okay, amalgamation. In Greek, what that means is that two letters are combining to form a separate letter. All right, when you have a verb stem that ends in certain letters, when you go to add the sigma in the future tense, that sigma will blend with the letter that ends the verb stem, and it will produce another letter, a different letter, and so you'll end up with a slight form change. Okay, and let's go over these. Okay, if you have a verb and you take off the omega ending that is on the dictionary form, look at that verb stem now, and if the verb stem ends in one of these three letters, when you go to add the sigma, something will happen. Okay, and those three letters are P, beta, and phi. And those are kind of a family of letters. Okay, and those three, when you go to add the sigma, those three letters will turn into a psi. Actually, not difficult to imagine why. Okay, just say the two letters P and sigma, ps, okay, and it's the sound of the letter psi. Okay, beta sigma, bs. Okay, kind of the same idea. You say it really fast, and it kind of sounds like a psi. All right, phi, that's a little bit harder. Okay, but it's actually that letter is related to the first two. And so, yeah, those three letters combine with the sigma to give you the letter psi. It will replace both the letter and the sigma, okay, and you're left with a psi. The next three are kappa, gamma, and chi. Those three letters, when you go to add the sigma, if those three letters end the stem, you add the sigma and it turns into a xi. As in the previous example, okay, you take the sound of kappa and the sound of sigma, you add those together and you get the sound of xi. Okay, not difficult to see how that works. This last set here, the last three letters, tau, delta, and theta, those are all related letters, and when you go to add the sigma to the end of the stem, the original letter, the tau, delta, or theta, will disappear and you're just left with a sigma. Okay, so instead of adding the sigma to the kind of end of the stem, you end up dropping a letter and keeping the sigma. So I've given you a couple of examples here. Let's look at these. Okay, grapho. Again, this is the word I write. If you want to say I will write, future, have a look at the word grapho. The first person singular ending is at omega, so we can drop that off to get the stem. The stem then is gamma, rho, alpha, phi, and notice the stem ends in a phi, which is one of these amalgamation letters. Okay, phi plus sigma equals a psi, and so the future tense first person singular of grapho is gropso, gamma, rho, alpha, psi, omega. Okay, again, the psi replaces both the phi and the sigma. Second example there, patho. Right, drop off the omega ending, the first person singular ending, and you're left with the verb stem, p, epsilon, iota, theta. If the stem ends in a theta, this is one of the last set there, tau delta theta. So when you go to add the sigma, you drop off the theta, and you're left with a sigma. Peso. All right. I hope that's clear. Okay. Grapho, phi plus sigma equals psi, so you end up with gropso. Patho, theta will drop out, you're left with a sigma, so you have peso. All right. Patho means I trust in, and so peso means I will trust in. All right, amalgamation. Again, if your verb stem ends in these letters, you're going to have a slight change there. But again, this is a pretty basic rule, and so yeah, hopefully it's easy to see. Okay, anytime you see one of these letters that has a sigma sound, psi or xi, start thinking about like, yeah, this might be a future tense, and what verb it's from. All right. Future tense stem changes. Okay, stem changes are the bane of many Greek students' existences. All right. Yeah, verbs will have stem changes, and some of the stem changes can be pretty profound, especially in other tenses. But when we're dealing with the present tense, which doesn't, I can't really think of any present tense verb that undergoes stem changes, with the exception of like your to be verb, which is what we'll be covering right after this. The very next slide, I think, is the to be verb. But in the present tense, you're pretty much going to have standard stems. Okay. In the future tense, there are a few of these verbs. They're not super common, but there are a few of these verbs that will undergo what we call a stem change, okay, for whatever reason, and they are pretty, they don't have any real rhyme or reason. There isn't really a pattern, okay, there isn't kind of a set, predictable way that you can tell, okay, this present tense form is going to have this future tense stem, all right, they're just pretty much arbitrary changes. All right, but fortunately, in the future tense, these changes are not super profound. Okay, it's not difficult to go from that future tense stem back to the present tense sort of dictionary form. All right, have a look at some of these. Now, when we change the stem, all of the normal rules for the future tense will still apply. Okay, you still put a sigma on the end of the stem, and if any amalgamation thing is going to happen, we go to any of these like these letter combinations that change. Okay, those all apply to these stem changes. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these stem changing futures. First word there is keruso. This is the Greek word for I preach or I proclaim. All right, when we go to the future, if you want to say I will proclaim, I will preach, you change that future stem from kappa, eta, rho, upsilon, sigma, sigma. Now we're going to change it to kappa, eta, rho, upsilon, kappa. Okay. Kerus in the present becomes keruk in the future. And kappa is one of the amalgamation letters, and so kappa plus sigma equals xi, so the future form of the first person singular is kerukso. Keep in mind with all of these, I've only given the first person singular because otherwise it would be taking up a lot more slides and a lot more time, but each one of these future forms has 5 other forms. Okay, this is only the first person singular. There's a second, third person singular, and a first, second, third person plural as well. Okay, and you should at least start memorizing those endings. All right. But yeah, so you have K root so, you also have K root ses, K root se, and all of the other forms. Okay, I've put here the first person singular. So I will preach is K root so. All right, next word, doxazo. Doxazo. Delta, omicron, xi, alpha, zeta, omega. This word means I glorify. Same basic root as doxology. The doxology, it's a song of praise. And so this is the word I praise or I glorify. In the future tense, the stem will change to delta, omicron, xi, alpha, delta. And if you remember from the amalgamation chart, delta is one of the letters that drops out in front of the sigma. So the future form, first person singular, is delta, omicron, xi, alpha, sigma, omega, doxaso. All right, I will glorify. Next verb. Nice, easy verb. Okay, if you pronounce this one, if you sound this one out, you'll know exactly what it is. The word is baptizo. Baptizo. And thankfully, it means exactly what it sounds like. Okay, it's a verb form, I baptize. To put this into the future, I will baptize. Beta, alpha, pi, tau, iota, delta. Okay, that zeta will become a delta. And notice that that's a pattern. Okay, the doxazo, baptizo, hetoimazo. Okay, all of those end in a zeta, and in the future stem, they all change to a delta. Okay, so baptid is the future stem. Delta drops out. Again, delta drops out before the sigma, so you're left with future form, first person singular, baptizo, just with a sigma. Okay, I will baptize. Next word, be careful with this one. It is an epsilon, but notice if you look carefully, the breathing mark is turned around, so this is a rough breathing mark. So we're going to pronounce an H sound in front of the epsilon. This verb is said hetoimazo. Hetoimazo. Okay. Epsilon, rough breathing mark, tau, omicron, iota, mu, alpha, zeta, omega. Hetoimazo. Alright, and again, as we had with the previous two verbs, the zeta changes to a delta in the future. Hetoimad. And so then when we make the actual future form, we're going to drop off the delta, and you're left with hetoimaso. Okay. Hetoimazo with a zeta is I prepare, present tense. Hetoimaso with a sigma is I will prepare, future tense. This last verb, I put this up there because this is a really weird situation. I have no idea why this happens. All right, but in the present tense, the dictionary form is echo. Okay, epsilon with a smooth breathing mark, chi, omega. Really short verb form here. This verb means I have or I hold. Okay, I have a book. I hold a stick. Okay, echo. Now, for some crazy reason, okay, this is not another example of my typo. For some really weird reason, the breathing mark changes direction from the present tense to the future tense. And that's the only difference. I have no idea why this happens. Okay, it doesn't, as far as I know, this doesn't happen with any other verb. All right, the future tense stem is exactly the same as the present, except you reverse the direction of the breathing mark. So the future stem, instead of ek, is heck. Okay. And yeah, I'm not actually swearing there. That is actually the future stem. Okay. The chi will combine with a sigma to produce a xi. And so the future form of echo, I have or I hold, is hexo. All right, hexo with the rough breathing mark. Now this is I will have or I will hold. Hexo. So yeah, be careful of that one. Okay, if you're reading along and you see this form, why does it have a rough breathing mark? Well, the breath mark changes direction in the future tense. All right, if you have the present tense down, the future tense, again, it looks a lot like the present tense. Endings are exactly the same, just put a sigma or a sigma sound on there. Let's move now on to another verb. This is a present tense verb, but it is a completely different verb. It looks totally different. It is actually another class of verbs, and this is one verb that falls into a category called me verbs. They're called that because if you look at this, it's pronounced a me, epsilon iota with a smooth breathing mark, then mu iota, a me, and this means I am. Okay, this is kind of a to be verb. Okay, there's an entire class of verbs that looks like this. They're called me verbs because they end in mu iota. Okay, me. But this is the only me verb that we will be studying until chapter 25, the very last chapter that we will be looking at all year. You will be very relieved to know this because these me verbs are infamous in Greek for being very difficult. They have very unusual patterns. They change all over the place. Okay, nothing is standard, and you'll see it with this verb. Okay, but even for a me verb, this verb is kind of nasty and difficult. Okay, but that's pretty much like every other language. All right, English, I am, you are, he, she, or it is. Why are those? How are those even related? Okay, am, are, is. Okay, why? Who knows? Because it's this to be verb. Spanish, right? Yo soy, tú eres, él, ella, es. Okay, yeah. What's going on there? Okay, why is this changing all over the place? Okay, yeah, just because it's a to be verb. Pretty much every language it's like that. Okay, and in Greek, well, here we go. Okay, first person singular, a me. Epsilon iota with a smooth breathing mark, mu iota. A me, I am. Second person singular, epsilon iota with a smooth breathing mark. Okay, and that little tilde or enya thing there, that is what we call a circumflex accent. I am going to ask you to memorize the accent placements for the first person singular and second person singular of this verb, okay, a me, and I'll get to why that is, or you can just read it there on the bottom of the slide. Okay, but yeah, I'm going to ask you to remember that a me, the first person singular, has a smooth breathing mark over the first iota, and over the second iota there is an acute accent, kind of this short little line that goes up to the right. Okay, you start right over the iota and kind of make a little short line just going up and to the right. Okay, it's called an acute accent, and it goes over the second iota. Okay. For the A, you can do this circumflex accent in a couple of ways. You can do it like it's written here, or you can just do it like a little arc that's going over the breathing mark. Okay, I don't have a really good example of this. I think I mentioned before, I tried like every single font that they have in here, and none of them do it that kind of alternate way. But if you get the textbook, you'll see it there. Okay, but yeah, just indicate there's a circumflex accent there, this little curvy line over the breath mark, okay, and you'll need that in the second person singular form for you are. Moving on now, the third person singular, you don't need to give me an accent on this one. Okay, estin or esti, this again has the movable nu. Normally it's only in the third person plural, but here with a me, there's a movable nu in the third person singular. Same rule, okay, if what follows has a vowel, if what follows starts with a vowel, you're going to include the nu. If what follows is a consonant, then it's just left off, okay, and it's just esti. All right, this is a third person singular, he, she, or it is. Then moving to the plurals, first person plural, es men, we are. Okay. Epsilon with a smooth reading mark, sigma, mu, epsilon, nu. We are. Second person plural, epsilon with a smooth reading mark, sigma, tau, epsilon, este. This means y'all are. And the third person plural, epsilon iota with a smooth breathing mark, sigma iota movable nu. A C or a sin, they are. Alright, so there are your 6 forms of the to be verb. Please memorize these really well. These are really difficult to memorize. But yeah, they appear all the time. If you can probably imagine, the to be verb is always a really basic and common word in pretty much every language. So yeah, become very familiar with these forms. You'll be seeing them a lot. And here I've told you why I want you to know the accents in only the first and second person singular forms. I promised you before in the chapter 1, okay, we aren't going to be working with accents for the most part, but in this verb I'd like you to memorize these because there's an ambiguity there. Okay, there can be some confusion. A me is the word for I am, a me with the acute accent on the second iota, a me, I am. But if there is a circumflex accent over the first iota, then you pronounce it a me, and this word now means I will go, okay? It's a future tense form of go, and I don't exactly know why that is. There is another word for go or come, but yeah, this is kind of just another word that they use, okay? A me means I will go. So to distinguish the two, we pretty much are never going to be using that second one, okay? But it is there in Greek, and so you need to know that the first person singular for this to be verb has the acute accent on the end of it, okay? So yeah, know that. If I ask you for a form chart, be able to give me that acute accent there. Okay, the second person singular form, a, with the circumflex accent over the iota, means you are, but if you don't have that accent on there, it means if. Okay? A, just with a smooth breathing mark and no accent, this now means if. And yeah, if, it's a pretty common word, okay, in every language, and so this one is particularly important to memorize that accent, okay, so you know which one you're dealing with. So yeah, memorize that one and memorize the accents only in those first 2 positions. But remember, for all of them, you need something over the vowel / diphthong, right? If a word begins with a vowel or a diphthong, it will always have a breath mark, even if you don't pronounce it. Okay, so if you're just, all of these, you don't pronounce anything, you don't pronounce an H sound before the vowel or diphthong. So all of these need smooth breathing marks on them. Okay, don't forget those. But accents only on those first 2 forms. All right, a me, to be. All right, next slide here. Negation. I loose. How do we say I do not loose? Okay, the word for not. Well, to make an indicative mood verb negative, or in other words, to say not something, you put this little word before the verb. The word will always come before the verb. Okay, this word is oo. It's simply oo. Just the diphthong omicron upsilon with a smooth breathing mark. Okay, it says oo, and that simply means not. Okay, anytime you see that little word before a verb, you're now dealing with not whatever the verb is. Okay, I do not run. She does not walk. Okay, they do not speak. Okay, yeah, oo before a verb is the word for not. Oo is used with the indicative mood, which again is the only mood that will be covering the first 2 quarters of this year. As we move into other moods, with branching out into the subjunctive, optative, imperative, all of those other moods, for those ones that are not indicative, you're going to use the word may instead. Okay? Oo with the indicative, may with pretty much all the other moods. They mean the same thing. Okay, may just means not, but if you're saying I might not walk, now it's going to be the subjunctive mood, and so you'll be using may to negate that instead of oo. Now this word oo, it has some alternate forms. Okay, and the rules on this are similar to the movable nu. Okay, if the word after oo starts with a consonant, the form that you're going to see is just that, oo. Okay, oo and consonant verb. If the word following oo starts with a vowel and the vowel has a smooth breathing mark over it, the form that will appear is omicron upsilon kappa. Okay, ook. And then if the word following, oo, starts with a vowel and there is a rough breathing mark over that vowel or diphthong, you're going to see omicron upsilon ki. Okay, ook. Alright, so 3 forms, but they all mean the same thing, and yeah, pretty much depends on what follows this negation word. Right, so have a look at these examples. Luo is the word for I loose. So if we say I do not loose, simply oo luo. Okay, oo in the front of the verb. In this case, the verb starts with a lambda, which is a consonant, and so you're going to see the form oo. Oo luo. I do not loose. The verb estin, here's that to be verb. Okay, third person singular of a me is estin. She is. To make this negative, now we're going to put oo in front, but notice estin begins with an epsilon, which is a vowel. There is a smooth breathing mark over the estin, and so it is ook estin. Okay. He is not. Okay. Ook with a vowel plus smooth breathing mark. Now this next word, hetoimazamen, we prepare, first person plural ending. To negate this one, notice there's an epsilon with a rough breathing mark, hetoimazamen. So when we go to negate this one, we're going to see omicron upsilon ki. Okay, ook hetoimazamen. We will not prepare. All right, that is the last thing that I have for you in this chapter. Lots of ground that we just covered, okay? But you're getting into the first actual elements of Greek grammar, okay? And you've learned a lot. I mean, this is, think about it. You've learned 2 different tenses, present and future tense. You've learned this entirely new system that is really different from English. Okay, English has actually very little variation in our forms. When you're thinking about standard verbs, okay, I study, you study, we study, okay, they study. Just the word study, you don't know whether it's first, second, third person, singular, or plural. The only real difference comes in the third person singular, where you would say something like, he, she, or it studies. Okay, that's the different form. But otherwise, all of the other forms here, there's no difference. That, which is why English, you need that personal pronoun there. Okay, you can't just say study, and have your meaning conveyed. Okay, because it could be, again, I study or they study. We don't know. Okay. But Greek, you have these different forms, and so it's very precise. It is difficult because you have to learn 6 different forms to say the same thing, okay, to say one verb. But it is very precise in that, it's pretty much exactly what it's saying. Just one word gives you, an entire sentence. All right, so that is chapter 3. Go over this material as often as you need. If you can get your textbook, I hope you all had the opportunity to at least order the textbook if you don't have it yet. But yeah, go over these form charts, especially. Those will be important. And I'll be sending through some quizzes, some exercises for you to look at. Okay, so you can get lots of practice with these, and we'll see how you're doing. Keep on reviewing your alphabet. Okay, practice writing the letters out, practice sounding them out, and we'll get you comfortable with these hopefully in the next few weeks. All right, but yeah, if you have made it this far, again, you've covered a lot of ground and you've learned a lot of stuff. So good work, and keep it up, and we'll get through this. All right, it's only the start of the second week, but these weeks will go, they'll start going really fast here, and before you know it, will be like Thanksgiving, and we're getting ready to close up the quarter. Okay, so yeah, take care, have a great week, and a good day, whatever day you're watching this on, and I hope that you are having a chance to enjoy some of this at least. Okay, but yeah. Take care, and I will see you again sometime.